Okay, this is the audio review for Feeling Like a Citizen, Living Like a Denizen. Deportee's Sense of Belonging by Tanya Golish-Boza from Race, Class, Gender, 10th edition. Okay, so the reading starts with the story of Victor, who came to the U.S. as a kid but never applied for naturalization when he turned 18. So he never became a full citizen, but he remained a legal permanent resident. So at the age of 24, he got arrested for selling marijuana, served 2.5 years, and then he was deported to Jamaica, where he had no family, friends, or other social support. He sees Brooklyn as his home, but the law disagrees, and without legal citizenship, he was not protected from deportation. So the Constitution guarantees a broad set of rights to all persons, and citizenship is never mentioned. And the Supreme Court has upheld the rights of non-citizens, such as due process, access to education, and all the rights promised in the Constitution. The line between citizen and non-citizen is more blurred than we realize when we look at legal permanent citizens who exist in a gray area where they can live in the U.S. and exercise nearly all the same rights as citizens. Legal citizenship increases in importance as hundreds of thousands of legal permanent residents, or LPRs, are deported in the context of mass deportation. This is due to legal changes in 1997, which made it easy for LPRs to be deported for minor crimes. So, legal permanent residents like Victor are denizens, people who have settled within the territory of a country but lack citizenship. The author asks, why don't denizens qualify for citizenship? So the article examines interviews with deported LPRs and shows that there is a disconnect between the law, which privileges legal citizenship, and the daily lives of denizens, in which they experience a profound sense of belonging in their communities. Okay, so legal citizenship, alienage, and belonging. So legal citizenship signifies the official recognition of a particular relationship between a person and the government, and guarantees terrestrial rights. All who live here pay taxes, are subject to laws, attend government-sponsored schools, and benefit from public services. But only citizens can shape laws or be safe from expulsion. Citizenship and alienship define each other in a dialectical fashion, as citizenship makes aliens possible. Only citizens are part of the political community, but the U.S. is also a cultural, social, and economic community. So many non-citizens consider themselves members of those communities. Citizenship implies a political relationship with the government. What is most important in our everyday lives is our families and communities, and often not that political relationship. As well, some non-citizens can vote in local elections, so the clear difference is really in who can be and who can't be deported. So the author cites William Walter's Technology of Citizenship, talking about how deportation, this whole mechanism of mass deportation, actively creates a world divided into states. Okay, so when it comes to deportation of legal permanent residents from the U.S., if you lack citizenship, being in the U.S. is a privilege, not a right. So deportation means revoking that privilege. Citizens are not deported, as that would be considered banishment, and the U.S. doesn't do that. So in 1996, Congress passed 2 laws that changed the rights of all foreign-born in the U.S. The first was the Anti-Terrorism and Effective Death Penalty Act, and the other was the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996. So these laws eliminated judicial review of some deportation orders and required mandatory detention for non-citizens, and introduced the potential for the use of secret evidence in certain cases. Prior to this, when judges had discretion over these cases, they basically would decide whether someone was deported based on their rehabilitation, their remorse, their family support, and their ties to the community or lack thereof. So in 1996, these laws that were passed took away discretion in aggregated felony cases, and it originally meant for murder, for drug trafficking or gun trafficking. But the expansion of this definition now includes any crime of violence or theft offense, which imprisonment would be a 1 year. So this also means drug possessions in many cases. Okay, moving on to case selection and methodology. So the author interviewed 30 Jamaican deportees who were former legal permanent residents. And the author chose Jamaica because of the steady migration from the island. Also, most of the interviewees were deported for drug crimes. Most that she interviewed had no intention of returning to Jamaica prior to them being deported there. All of them left children, parents, spouses behind when they were deported. And of her respondents, they lived in the U.S. between 8 and 38 years. When it comes to the methodology and site description, Kingston was the primary location, and the researcher used snowball sampling to obtain a sample to interview. She also had 2 research assistants that lived in the area that were helpful in getting participants as well as contextualizing their experiences because they knew the area so well. And only one of her respondents was female. Okay, moving on to the citizenship of aliens and the significance. Interviews showed a sense of belonging to the U.S., as a lot of these respondents built their lives here and their family ties were here, which was a central reason the deportees cited when arguing that they belonged to be in the U.S. Hazel, the only female respondent, had 3 children in the U.S., so she did her time in jail and was deported after a drug possession charge. So she thinks she should be allowed to return to the U.S. for 2 reasons. 1, her crime wasn't serious, and 2, her children are citizens, which she believes should make her one too. Lamar, another respondent, has similar claims. He was a legal permanent resident, and his grandmother, both parents, and his 4 children are all citizens. So he felt that he should be considered a citizen in that context as well. So feeling like a citizen is not a reason to legally challenge deportation. The only way to do that is to naturalize and become a citizen. Deportees made claims to the U.S. based on their relationships to their families, their friends, and their communities. They did not have these relationships in Jamaica, which made them feel lost and out of place. So the author wondered, if they felt such a strong sense of belonging, why didn't they seek out legal citizenship? Well, the answer was, most of them never got around to it. The interviewees thought about it, but they didn't follow through. She used the example of Chris, who watched his family naturalize. They encouraged him to do so too. So did his wife. But he never did. And after 38 years in the U.S. as a legal permanent resident, he was deported. So most don't see it as a pressing issue because the daily pressures of their life supersede the perceived need to seek out citizenship. Exclusion only becomes visible once they face deportation. For most deportees, alienage was not significant in their daily lives. Their sense of belonging was highly localized. Legal permanent residents' sense of community was rooted in their families and their local communities. They had social citizenship and cultural citizenship, so they didn't see legal citizenship as important until they were faced with deportation, which they felt was unfair because they felt like citizens. So the author points out that deportation is an exercise of state power that can be enacted exclusively on non-citizens. Most LPRs saw themselves as law-abiding, quote-unquote, citizens and permanent residents of the U.S. Again, they only encountered alienage with deportation, the irony being that if they felt more excluded from the social or cultural citizenship, they might have been more motivated to seek out naturalization in the first place